Hey, what's up, guys? Britton here. Just posted a new blog a few days ago, actually, but I'm just getting around to making a video about it. It's called "About Women, about Single Women and Their Goddamn Dogs." Um, I've kind of noticed this parallel since re-entering the dating world that there are a lot more dog-obsessed women these days than there were last time I was single, about 3 years ago. And I don't know, I found that very interesting. So, with the rise of feminism that's grown in almost perfect parallel, I thought I'd make a connection there. Whether there's a connection or not, we shall see. But if you want to check out the blog post, you can check the link in the description below. And if you just want to hear me read it right now, then I'm about to begin. So, here it goes about single women and their goddamn dogs. So, what about them? In a sentence, dogs are stealing our women, and we need to take them back. The rest is a bit more complicated. It starts with values of the individual and the forces that are influencing those values. Yes, this is another hate piece about feminism. You've been warned. In light of what might constitute values for the typical 21st century young woman until now, as I can observe, of course I'm not one, many of which have been synthesized by feminism through the higher education system, which is growing deeper socialist roots by the semester in programs like women's studies. I have noticed a pattern that is worth noting. With the rise of the feminist movement, in almost perfect parallel, there has been an eruption of dog-obsessed women who claim, whether directly or indirectly, that their dog has filled the gap that their ideology has created by pushing men away from them. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wait, you don't like dogs? What kind of monster are you? Well, actually, I do prefer cats, but that's completely besides the point. Also, did I say that? Now, look, I'll be the first to defend the claim that someone who doesn't like pets in general is probably a terrible person. That's not what this is about, though. This is about how the deep brainwashing effect that feminism has had on young women has led them to abandon their nature. This is about how if they want to retain what is true, what will fulfill them individually, as well as leave a positive impact on future generations, then they must overcome their surface inclinations toward group identity and learn to think for themselves. I'm not saying that men don't have work in this department to do as well. Of course we do. But this is a little more difficult for young ladies to do, no offense. They're more agreeable and impressionable than men are, and generally the only women who are going to disagree with that are those who might be exceptions to the general rule, and there are plenty of exceptions. But it's just that women are a tad more likely than men to submit to group identity politics to begin with. And the dangerous consequence of that today has been that the default mode of thought for Western women is currently the feminist one on some level. And that is profoundly unattractive to men. So it's having some negative consequences when it comes to mating and stuff. When in our evolutionary history before today has the correct view ever been that women should not bear and raise children, but rather pursue long-term careers and overthrow this male dominance hierarchy that built damn near every inch of architectural and conceptual infrastructure in our society? Never, and it shouldn't necessarily happen now, because we don't know what a female-run society would look like. It's not self-evident that it would be a good thing. I'm also not arguing that it would necessarily be a bad thing, although I think most people would be hesitant to vote for such a society if they were forced into deciding one way or the other. After all, look at the most recent presidential election. And just because Hillary won the popular vote, that doesn't necessarily mean that there weren't plenty of people who were, wanting to vote for Hillary who went into the booth and decided kind of at the last minute to go the other way. But also the popular vote for Hillary came mainly from cities and from liberal cities and from big liberal cities. And so people in cities are more likely to submit to group identity politics as well, to, commit that bandwagon fallacy, so to speak. and not think for themselves. I mean, you move to a big city to like sort of be liberal and open and be around like-minded, entrepreneurial people who maybe think like you. Well, even open-minded people all start agreeing with each other at a certain point if you put enough of them in a room together for long enough, and that's what happens in cities. So actually, our democracy system is working in a very important way right now, because it's very much a good thing that Hillary did not win the election for deep, deep philosophical reasons, and that's actually maybe something we could talk about another time. So anyway, to continue. But as of late, women have had overwhelming success in a number of professional positions that they never had before, and it's great that we have progressed to the point that everyone can make her own decision about which career paths to take and what to do in life. But what isn't great are the socialist forces that push for equity rather than equality. That's the forces that are pushing for equal outcome rather than equal opportunity, because we already have equal opportunity here in America, and that's a great thing, at least more so than anyone else does anywhere in the world, right? Once you push starting for equal outcome, well, that's when bad things happen. That's when socialism reaches its mortal, I guess it's mortal level, and we've seen that happen before in history. Go read some books. So dogs aren't the root of the problem, of course. All right, so they're just one of the many surface reactions to the deeper-seated illusions that feminism, for example, is tricking women into believing. That regardless of the rights issue, that they are equal to men. No, I'm not saying that men are better. I'm saying that men and women don't play the same evolutionary game, so it doesn't make sense to compare them in this way to begin with. And what I mean by evolutionary games are the specific roles men and women play in mate selection, reproduction, and driving the human race forward. In case you're a feminist and are too deluded to see those roles by literally walking outside and looking around, they're being made absolutely clear by the swipe culture of online dating in, say, Tinder, for example. And it goes something like this. With the exception of those few women who are exceptions to the rule, who have, say, personality characteristics that are obviously more archetypally male, men are generally the aggressors. They swipe every remotely attractive woman right and always send the first message. Women are exponentially more selective in who they swipe. They prefer to be messaged first, and they are selective about which messages they reply to. They take a show me what you got approach to choosing mates, just like birds do. Male birds are more beautiful than female birds. They're more colorful. And this happens all over nature in many species, not just humans, right? Women take a show me what you got approach to choosing mates, whereas most men have already seen in the woman's pictures that what she's got is plenty good enough, or at least enough for them to want to know more. And that's true for online dating, and it's true in person. It always has been, and it's something we'll probably always have to live with. But that doesn't mean that women shouldn't write a bio in their online dating profile. In fact, these days it's more important than ever for a woman to make clear her stance on at least one issue in particular, and that issue is whether or not she's a feminist. This is a don't waste my fucking time point from the man's perspective. Because if you are a feminist, please say so up front so every self-respecting man can swipe you left and be done with you forever. If you aren't, perhaps you should make that clear too. Because in the face of the university's culture becoming more and more overwhelmingly politically correct, the default assumption is that you are a feminist of some sort, even if you don't say so. So be aware of that, ladies. That's the assumption that we're living under. One way you leave that point in the abyss of ambiguity is to overemphasize your obsession with dogs. It's just one way. So Tinder bios like the following could and perhaps should be interpreted to have feminist or at least some social justice implications. Must love dogs, or I like dogs more than I like people, or I probably swiped you right for your dog, or can I date your dog and have you as a pet? Now these seem cute, funny, and harmless, and for some women out there, I'm willing to believe that they are. For many, though, I think this is actually a real problem. For one, I've seen these a million times. Literally half of women state something similar to this in their Tinder bio, so it's unoriginal and does nothing to make you stand out. Perhaps to get a super like on Tinder. Um, Now, it's also completely unnecessary to state that you like dogs in your bio, because most people already do love dogs. Since apparently that isn't obvious, I suspect there's something strange going on. So let's examine a few reasons why a single woman might want a dog apart from the surface inclination that everyone has to want a dog. The first one is affection. Of course, they're cute and they're cuddly, even if they're not, apparently. And they're emotionally reliable. They're your best friend that will literally die by your side. So, yeah, you kind of want that in a guy, of course. But in feminist terms, they're kind, because feminists try to promote kindness as the highest virtue, when in fact they end up becoming a huge hypocrite in that regard. And they're cowardly, like most social justice activists are. Most all of them, duh. So one's affection. Two is security. They're strong and aggressive, the big ones are anyway, and will do literally anything, even die, to protect their owners. They protect you physically, like a man would. And but also like a feminist or a social justice warrior wants to be protected ideologically in her safe space. And then thirdly, there's dependence. Dogs need attention and care from a master. This puts a woman in a position of power over it, which feminists love because they're angry, power-obsessed monsters. And same goes for all other social justice, warriors. Now, I'm sure I'm missing more points here. There are more than just those three, more connections that we can make between, why one might have a dog, the connection between that, and what a man is able to provide in a relationship or is supposed to provide in a relationship, and then the feminist underlying reasons for wanting a dog, I guess. But anyway, this is a work in progress, and maybe there's nothing to it, but I think there's something to it. And to prevent myself from becoming too verbose, I'll end with this. In light of new feminism, women are in serious danger of losing touch with what they really want, and that's men. In turn, men are losing women. This is upsetting for us as it should be for them. The feminism that has infected universities, and thus the minds of so many women my age, has drastically limited the number of educated women that might otherwise be partner options for me. And that sucks. And for, many other great guys out there. Now, again, it is by no means a negative thing that women have equal rights as men in the civilized West. And if that's still the point you're obsessing over, then you're just missing the point. So please leave. But yeah, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm getting at is that feminism does women the injustice, at least from the man's perspective, of telling them that having equal rights to men isn't enough, that they should capitalize on every one of those opportunities on behalf of all women to overthrow this thing called the patriarchy, even if it isn't what they as individuals want. Not to mention the male alpha complex that inspired the creation of the derogatory patriarchy, by the way, is exactly what women find attractive in men to begin with. So this mindset is completely counterproductive. They tell women to take up this group identity role and sacrifice their own desires and their health and well-being in many cases, this fat empowerment bullshit, to set an empowering example for young women to do the same for the sake of their arbitrarily defined group. You don't need a man to be a proper woman. A dog can fill that role just fine. Well, if you're empowered by the fact that you're fat, then don't expect any attention from men. Empower? No. It's about power. It's about power. So stop and think. And before you get a dog, make sure you know why you're getting one and why you want one. And if that's to compensate for the lack of male attention you've been getting, a dog won't make it better. It'll make it worse, because then you'll have at least 2 reasons to scare men off. And perhaps there's something about you that actually needs to change. And that's probably that you should first stop watching the fucking news, and cut your ties with all left-leaning media sources entirely. Left-leaning especially, right-leaning too. I mean, it's not good to lean one way or the other heavily as a media source if you're trying to, uh, promote news instead of propaganda, but it's pretty much all propaganda on both sides these days. And, weirdly, the right has become the voice of reason recently in journalism. But just stop watching the news. Get it completely out of your life so you can think for yourself. Second, break up with your ugly, bitter, resentful, man-hating, lesbian feminist friends. They were never really your friends anyway, for reasons that should be absolutely clear by now. And third, think about what you actually want. Outside of the influence of all these ideas that have been thrown at you, and start taking steps toward actually getting that thing. And there will be nothing more attractive to men or more empowering for you than that, I assure you. And that's it. If there was something that you wanted to read over, you could check out the link in the description below. If you'd like to comment, feel free to do so. I'll be happy to engage anyone. And that's about it. So until next time, cheers.